Hey friends! Welcome to Spirit Club, a podcast and community that is all about doing the inner work to live an aligned and, dare I say, happy life. I'm your host, spiritual guide and intuitive, Angell Kelly, and I'm here to share my teachings along with messages passed on to me from higher consciousness. I've also got incredible guests in store to help you go down all those spiritual rabbit holes. So let's go! Welcome to the club! Hi friends, hi Spirit Club. Today's topic feels very close and near to my heart, and I just feel really honored to talk about this. This was a request from a listener and honestly something I know that many of you feel and are looking for. So today we're going to talk about how to reconnect or create a relationship with God. So where do I begin with such a huge and beautiful question? You know, when I sat down to think about this, I felt the power of it. I felt the bigness of it. And I keep coming back to, I just feel so humbled and honored to be able to talk about it. So first of all, I want to talk about where I think this question comes from, because I see it and sense that there's like a similar place for all of you of where this question is coming from. And that is, you feel a pull or a call to connect to God, but you feel very uncomfortable with religion. Some of you feel more uncomfortable with religion than others. Some of you even have some trauma around religion or lifetimes past, and you're carrying that trauma forward. And I want you to know that I came from the same place. So I thought I would start with sharing my story around reconnecting to God. So I grew up in a religious household, Anglican religion. We attended church every weekend. We did all the things, baptism, communion, confirmation. And Anglican is like somewhere in the middle ground between Catholic and Protestant, whatever that means to you. And I don't remember much other than I didn't want to be there. I didn't connect to anything that was being said. And I almost just like studied it like I would study a topic in school that I didn't care about. I would just like go through the motions, perform, but nothing resonated, nothing clicked inside, nothing felt right. And certainly some things felt wrong. For example, the general Christian idea that we are all sinners and that we need to repent in order to get into heaven, otherwise we're going to hell. That narrative never felt good to me. But I lived under my dad's roof, so we go to church. So once I entered university, I was studying philosophy, and my rebellion against God, against Christianity, against Jesus, against the Bible, all of that began. I even remember, like, it was like I was trying to prove there was no existence of God through philosophy. And I remember I would write my dad emails trying to show him how wrong he was. I was really angry, like a classic rebellion. Sorry, Dad. So I renounced my religion. It was never really mine. It was more like what my minister calls secondhand religion. And I renounced God along with it. And I carried on with my life. And I didn't really feel like anything was missing other than I didn't have to go to this place that I didn't like going to. And shortly thereafter, I found the concept of the universe through the book, The Secret. I don't know if any of you remember that back in like 2006, 20 years ago almost. And the concept of the universe felt good. It felt like something I could get behind. The universe was like safe and comfortable. And so the universe and personal growth became my religion, became my spiritual base. And that's what I had for about 15 years. And then something happened that I wasn't looking for and didn't expect. A Course in Miracles found me. For those of you who don't know, A Course in Miracles is a channeled text of Jesus. And it's basically a training of the mind to go from separated to connected, or from fear to love. But I didn't know any of that. When Course in Miracles found me, I had no idea what A Course in Miracles was. I was just getting all these hints from the universe that I needed to look into it. And then next thing you know, I'm walking through a secondhand bookstore and it's in a display case right in front of me. So, okay, I pick it up. Still don't know anything about it. Then I'm with my acupuncturist and she asks me flat out, have you heard of A Course in Miracles? And I was like, oh my gosh, I just picked it up. And she was like, oh, okay, well, there's this study group starting January 1st. And so I joined that study group, and then I actually ended up meeting with this study group every week for an entire year for my first year of studying A Course in Miracles. So that's why I say A Course in Miracles found me, because it was really not something I was seeking out. But I digress. So A Course in Miracles uses the word God and uses a lot of Christian language and concepts. And at first I was very triggered by it, very triggered. It was hard for me to get to the lesson because I was so blocked by the words. So thank goodness I had that study group to work through all of that. And I realized that everything that I had connected to the word God and all that Christian language, all my beliefs around that didn't have to be true. The same way that I unblock about anything, any belief that is limiting me in life, I started to apply that to Christian language, Christian concepts, Christian leaders, the word God. Everything that I thought and believed to be true didn't have to be true. So I unblocked and I let that go. And I moved past it. And then I began to understand Christian teachings and concepts under the umbrella of the way the Course in Miracles teaches them, which is a whole new light. It's a real correction. And it resonated so deeply. Unlike when I went to church and I would hear all these words and nothing resonated, this resonated so deeply that I felt like I was reading something I already knew. And there was a real unlocking that happened inside of me. And my crown opened up and I just let God in. And not that God was ever gone, right? But I allowed myself to actively and consciously have a relationship with God. And one that was all my own, of my own design, not something anyone was telling me it had to be. And I really have to wonder that once you feel the love of God, can you ever really go back? I can't imagine going back. My faith in God isn't something that I have to work on. On this show, we talk all about doing the inner work. My faith isn't something I have to work on. Sure, I have to work on trust sometimes, or I have to work on staying in the energy of love, but my faith that God is love and that God loves me and that's accessible whenever I want it and always is always there. So from there, little by little, I began to accept other Christian leaders' concepts into my heart. And I connected to them in my own way, not in any way that anyone told me to. I did all of this just my own exploration with Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, prayer, the rosary, church, all these things. It's like I started over, like I never had a relationship or any knowledge of them to begin with. And I even, I went out church shopping, and I wasn't under the, how do I say this? I wasn't under the notion that I was going to find a place that 100% resonated all the time. When do we ever find that in life, But I was on the lookout for a church that there were certain things that I just wouldn't condone, I wouldn't be around, and that would be stuff like othering language that makes us better than them, or anything that was like judgment or shamey. I didn't really want any part in that. And I did. I found a church, Hillhurst United, shout out. I have an episode with the minister, Reverend John Pentland. You can scroll back to find it. And I was able to sit down in church and listen in a whole new way. It's like I was listening with a new filter on, like a new pair of glasses on, that changed the meaning of so much that I had learned before. So yeah, enough about me. That's my, thank you for listening to my story of returning to God and a lot of Christian ascended masters, Christian practices. It really felt vulnerable and private to share because honestly, that whole exploration adventure, I did 100% on my own. No one in my life. I mean, my dad is a religious man, but I wasn't exploring this path with anyone. And I don't think that's the way it has to be, but unfortunately, a lot of the time, the spiritual path can be a lonely one, at least at first. So thanks for listening. Now, although I'm sure you've gained something from that story, you know me here at Spirit Club, I like to try to break it down for you. Some practical steps you can follow to start to reconnect with God. So the first thing, if you didn't pick it up already, is to unblock. Are you surprised? Always unblocking here at Spirit Club. If you don't have a relationship to God and you want one, sounds like you're blocked, right? There's something standing in between you and what you want. And likely bad religion has traumatized you, either this life or in another, or down your lineage. So look at the beliefs that you have around God and start to question them, start to break them apart. They probably sound something like this. God is religious and I am not religious. Religion is bad. God allows terrible things to happen. To believe in God means this, and I don't agree with that. These are some common limiting beliefs around God that you will need to unblock if you want to create a relationship with God. And I shouldn't even say create a relationship. You already have one. It's just become active and aware to it. And at first, if it helps, if you want to use a word different than the word God, creator, source, divine, the universe, go ahead. I am of the opinion that there's no way that God cares about what word you use. That being said, I think a lot of people hide behind other words. And you're hiding because you're blocked or because you care about what other people think, which is another block. And I also really believe in the frequency of words, and you better believe that the word God has a huge frequency. But whatever gets you to create this relationship or work through this relationship. Second step, I would say, is to feed the relationship. So you've unblocked, now you're like, where do I begin? I always say that a relationship with God is like a relationship with anyone else. You need to nurture that relationship. So show up, spend time with God, talk to God, have a relationship. And not something defined by the church, although if you want church and all that to be a part of your exploration, you do you. This is about you and God. But it's about creating something that is your own. So not something defined or told to you by others, even though it sounds like I'm telling you right now. But something that you create between you and God. And I just want to clarify that by relationship, I don't mean test God. So it's not like, okay, I'll start a relationship with God. If I start praying and God answers my prayers, then God's listening. No, we're not testing God. We're not showing up to a relationship with expectations. We're not saying, oh, I'm only in this relationship if the other side of the relationship does what I want. No, you just show up with love and no expectations. Okay, and then third step, if we want to call it that, way to deepen your relationship with God is, as you begin to have a regular practice, regular relationship with God, you'll start to see God everywhere. You'll see God in nature. You'll see God in someone's eyes. You'll see God in a kind moment. And I encourage you to open your awareness to this, because God will speak to you through the world around you. And so to deepen your relationship, you open your awareness to what God is saying, what God is showing you, and then you trust and you follow the way. And as you trust and you follow the steps that God is showing you, guess what that does? That deepens a connection. That deepens a relationship. Same way it would deepen a relationship with any other person. So start there and let me know how it goes. Just make it your own, and throw out whatever rule book you have. Those are blocks. Blocks. Rule book, block. Think about the moments that you've felt closest to God and relive those moments. Bring back those moments. Connect deeper into those moments. And finally, I just wanted to end with a little warning for those of you who are reconnecting to God or creating a relationship with God, and that is that people in your life are going to feel a certain way about you having a relationship to God that you didn't have before. They just are. Just as you personally have walked into this episode maybe with some judgment and blocks around God, around religion, all this sort of thing, as will the people in your life. I have to tell you that when I started to share little pieces of my renewed relationship to God, some of the closest people to me were judging me. They were like, the things they said were like, what, are you going to follow Jesus now? What, are you born again? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just creating a relationship to God. Why do you care? And why do I have to label it? Get off me. But as much as I was frustrated, and I was frustrated at first and confused at why people were responding to me in this way, it didn't take me long to realize that I needed to have compassion, because that's just their own trauma around the word God, around religion. Who knows what their experiences have been or what they have seen or lived through. And it's not about me. They're just projecting that. And I used to do that. Before I did my own unblocking around it, I probably would say those things. So just be aware that that will happen. That will likely happen. Okay, friends, thank you so much for trusting me with this question and topic. It feels very close and vulnerable to my heart. Until next time.